All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to Office Hours. It's July 15th, 2020. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator. That means we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it with you and then showing you the ropes. If that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in to participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to the Office Hours channel so that you can share it with your team. With that said, let's kick this off. We only have one talking point today that I just wanted to make an announcement on, and that was we have officially crossed the 100 subscriber threshold on our YouTube channel. So hopefully I can claim finally our YouTube channel name. Still not letting me do it, but thank you everyone who has subscribed to our channel that made that possible for us today. So yeah, if you head over here, you'll see, let's see here, if I go back to this link here, you'll see all the past recordings from Office Hours so you can catch up. I've also started like a best of playlist. So these are some of the more successful Office Hours, I think. I do want to add more to that list, of course, and if there are any highlights that you like, let me know. If you go to this playlist here, it's the list of all the Office Hours, and then there's just some other content that Cloud Posse produces on this channel. All right, any other announcements that anybody would like to make, cool things that have been announced over the past week since we had Office Hours last week? All right. Well, with that said, let's turn it over. Any questions that we can help answer today? Oh, come on, it's got to be some question.
Hey, this is Eric Berg. I put that note in the in the Office Hours channel, but I inherited Terraform from my architect when I started this job like 4 or 5 months ago. That spins up our entire stack from the VPC. We're in AWS, VPC, RDS, bunch of buckets, EKS cluster, workers, you know, all that stuff. I spent a bunch of time abstracting that out so it would be like, you know, unique for client and environment. And now we're getting ready to stamp these out for, you know, multiple clients. By the way, we are automating in the mortgage servicer space, which is the segment of the, you know, the whole mortgage space that is responsible for paying regardless of whether the borrowers are paying, and they're the ones that collect the money. So these guys are, you know, totally untechnology oriented and psyched to have this. So I guess that just means, you know, it's more important for us. Anyway, the question is, what is the right approach to spinning up multiple environments like this? Right now, we've got our own dev. I am tearing down a demo environment, and we're going to replace it with a completely separate account with this whole VPC in there. And then we're going to start banging these out for clients. Maybe two, you know, maybe a staging and stuff. Should I be looking at workspaces?
So a couple questions though. I first want to get qualified here. It sounds like you're doing this for clients. You mentioned, is your company a managed services provider? So you're basically setting up these environments for your customers, but you're managing it also and your customers aren't operating it? Or are you building this and delivering it to the customers that they operate?
It's all us.
It's all you. Okay, cool. So each customer is what we like to call a tenant, and you're going to have all these dedicated single tenant environments for your customers.
Correct.
Yeah. And each tenant has its own AWS account.
Well, we have, there are accounts in an organization. And we'll talk about networking and how to do that stuff in another fun office hours. But yeah.
Well,
But,
you know, I mean, okay, it comes down to an architectural question, and there are ways there is no right. I mean, there are wrong answers, and there are multiple right answers, but I don't think there's one way to architect this, and we've seen it done a few ways, and we have the way we're doing it as well. We're typically going the route where each tenant is isolated in its own dedicated AWS account. And that's usually because the customers that need this kind of architecture want that for to achieve compliance. So total isolation.
we're doing that.
So concepts like state, workspaces, and VPC, those are all like abstractions to create isolation at different levels. Like VPC creates network level isolation, and workspaces create state level isolation. But if you want actual physical, I mean, this is kind of abuse of the word physical, but I mean, like the lowest level of separation you can basically get in AWS is by splitting these environments into separate accounts, and then you can continue to isolate from there. But that sounds like it might not be a requirement for what you're doing.
That's already what we've decided to do.
Okay.
And I've been using my providers with role assumptions. So I pass in the actual, account number because I was terrified for a while. I'm going to have all these accounts and like, is my default AWS credential set up right? Anyway,
yeah.
We are one per account.
Okay,
we might
good.
Get up to in an account, but same client.
Okay, yeah. So you might have multiple environments per client, but each client has its own account.
Right.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a good architecture so far, so good. Let's see here. Hold on.
Well, it's the state directories that are really, we're at the point where we're starting to talk about it. I created a directory structure that's like environments, it's got the client name, and then, so like environments for us, brace, and then dev. And in there, because it was taking literally days to like tear down CloudFront freaking installations because of those stupid Edge Lambdas. Yeah. So there's an account that like adds the Datadog integration and maybe just a couple other things like password policy. And then there's, I put CloudFront in a separate directory, which could feasibly be rolled back in. So there's 4 of them. Account, the application that does, that's where it's the VPC on up, Datadog, anyway, there's those separations.
So each one of these directories represents one state, one component of your stack there. So it has its isolated state. So you have one folder for like the account that provisions the account. You have another folder for Datadog, you said.
Application.
Okay, and the app. Yeah, so I mean, that could be okay. It depends on how complex your application is in terms of you want to break that out into smaller states that are decoupled. The more that you stick into the same state folder, the closer you get to this thing called like a Terralith, a monolithic Terraform app. But I don't know. So as we all know, like there are pros and cons with separating these things out tremendously, especially when you're managing so many single tenant environments. If each one of those single tenant environments is also then broken out into lots of different states, all we're achieving is moving or offloading that challenge of calculating the graph outside of Terraform to your systems, and that's non-trivial to do. So I haven't yet decided what I think is where that right line is when you're working with dedicated single tenants in the manner that you're doing. But I have seen it become a problem where you have 50, 60 individual projects that have to be managed for each individual tenant, and then seeing what the change graph is for that when you make a change is not something fun to implement.
Yeah, no, I'm appropriately frightened by exactly that proposition.
Yeah. Are you using Terraform Cloud?
No.
What are you using for CI or CD on this?
At this point, we're not. There's no CICD, and right now it's been like, just get to the point where we can reproduce these environments. And then we'll go through it a few times. We're also moving our CICD for like our dev stuff out of GitLab and probably into AWS.
Okay. So I'm just going to throw this out there that we've been down this path many times at Cloud Posse, implementing continuous delivery for Terraform. And, you know, there are a lot of tools out there like Atlantis. You can do it, you know, you can build your own using Jenkins. We've done that. You can build your own using CodeFresh. We've done that. It turns out to be a real pain in the butt to do it well. So if you don't have the will or desire or lack the sophistication to do it, consider just using Terraform Cloud and you'll save yourself a world of hurt.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for the input.
Yeah. All right. Did we answer your question then in the end?
Well, I mean, as you pointed out in the beginning, there isn't really a right answer.
Yeah.
We're still sort of gathering, you know, horror stories and stuff. And we'll go from there. We have a little time. I hate to say that, but, you know, right now, I just need to get me and everybody involved thinking along these lines and aware of the issues. And as I said, you know, appropriately terrified of the fact that, remember that IBM commercial when they're like, hey, yay, we got a hit. We got 10 hits. And then they're like,
yeah, that's a good one.
crashing down. I think that's always somewhere in my mind.
Yeah.
But yes, thank you. There's a, you know, Terraform Cloud is clearly one of the things to look at for this. And it's getting to be time to really start digging around for some solutions.
The sooner you introduce it, the sooner you stave off lots of bad habits and practices that you might start doing by running these things locally. And the more you do these things locally, the harder it's going to be to get it into automation later. So introduce this into the fiber of your operations, into everything you do sooner.
Thanks, Eric.
Yep. Cool. Any other questions that we can help answer? Or does anybody want to add anything actually to the previous conversation?
I can ask you, Eric, don't we have a reference architecture that we can show?
Well, you know, we don't have it open sourced yet, but this is the one you've been working on, right, Marcin?
This one with the, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so the Terraform Cloud reference architecture that you used as your base, that one is still private. And then the one you're doing right now is for Cloud Posse, internal, and that one's not been open source. So we plan to have some of this stuff open source probably over the coming year. In terms of 12 months, we'll get more of this stuff out there for everyone to see. This is what we've been focused on a lot, though, just in our client engagements lately.
Yeah, because what I'm actually currently doing is similar to what was the question. We're spinning up tenants in different organizations.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But the struggle is with the Terraform Cloud doesn't support TF-vars.
It doesn't support,
I guess
it supports TF-vars. It doesn't support different var files, but it supports the auto files, right?
Yeah.
No, that does kind of suck with the Terraform Cloud. Do we have how many people are using Terraform Cloud on the call today? Anybody else?
Yeah, we are.
How are you guys getting around the limitations around variables? Are you just how are you managing your settings in Terraform Cloud for your workspaces, the variables there?
We haven't fully adopted it yet. We're kind of, our different engineers are managing it on their own workspaces. So we haven't encountered a lot of the pain from just trying to collaborate all together.
Fair enough. Do the var files also not work when you're running Terraform CLI with Terraform Cloud as a remote state backend?
You cannot apply then. You can plan. So it doesn't matter what you will do. The apply, if you will enable state backend on a Terraform Cloud, you can only apply through Terraform Cloud.
Yeah, but doesn't the CLI trigger that remotely? Can't you do a plan? I think you can do a remote plan and a remote
You can
apply.
do remote plan, but when you will try apply, it will tell you that it won't do it because the state is in Terraform Cloud.
Okay. Cool. So any other questions we can help answer? Any cool announcements that you've seen this past week?
This is Stephanie, Sarah. I posted a question in the office hours channel. I don't know if you'll have much of an answer, just trying to talk through your ideas on it. I'm working on, we're a web development agency. We build and host a wide variety of apps, mostly PHP based, but some Node.js as well. And I'm trying to standardize our CI process and coding standards. But part of that is I'd like to centralize a bunch of our configuration files. Ideally centralizing the configuration for that being the default, but then on a per project basis, if it needs unique customization, then they can commit that file. And
now, is this CI that you plan to hand over to your customers when the project is done, or this is just something that you're using as part of your development process and the customer may or may not use it in the end?
This is mostly just us using it internally. I'm fine with like in the past, most of our stuff is open source. So once we hand over projects, then it's all still built on stuff that's available open source.
Have you already selected your CI platform?
Yes, we're using BuildKite for our CI platform.
Okay, I don't really have any advice for BuildKite, haven't used it. But generally speaking, and I think this is a little bit what you're saying, I like to say treat your pipelines as an interface and make your applications conform to the interface. So the way you should be testing, building testing and deploying should be more or less the same or identical across all your applications. That means you can standardize your pipelines, and then now every application can have the same set of pipelines. Now, your ability to enact that vision depends a lot on the CI tool. Tools like CodeFresh and tools like GitHub Actions make that very easy, and other systems I can't testify to.
Yeah, I think BuildKite will. The part of its power and weakness is that it's so flexible. So
yeah, well, exactly. That power is what you want to centralize, and then you want to eliminate the flexibility so that apps aren't using the flexibility. You want the flexibility to describe your initial set of pipelines. You don't want the flexibility for each application you deploy.
Fair.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas on like part of what I'm looking at for centralizing those coding standards, specifically like the configuration files? Are you aware of any good scaffolding tools or anything?
When you're saying configuration files, are we talking for CI or your applications?
Mostly for open source tools, it could be like centralizing some standard CI pipeline files, but also stuff like most of our stuff's in PHP, so it could be like.
Yeah, so this is the fun thing that like if we're talking CodeFresh, for example, CodeFresh natively supports the concept of centralized pipelines. So there's nothing you have to do differently. But then if we're talking about a tool that doesn't natively support that, then yeah, maybe other tools are needed. So some patterns I've seen used in other places is like Cookie Cutter. Cookie Cutter is a Python project. It allows you to define the scaffolding in a templatized way, like the file system of your repo. And then you can have a config file in your project that looks something like this. And you cookie cutter it, and it automatically, rolls that out to your repo.
It's a phenomenal tool. It's for more than just Python for certain. So.
Oh yeah. So just to emphasize, the tool happens to be written in Python. It has that's just a integration detail. It's used for anything you want to do this with.
Okay, great. That's the kind of tool I was looking for. Just
So
sort of trying to clone down the repo and just patch it together with scripts to put it in the files.
are you using GitHub?
I am.
Okay, so then the other consideration is, so this is also helpful for others using Cloud Posse or wanting to contribute more modules to Cloud Posse. Also for everyone listening, we do accept on a case-by-case basis contributions of Terraform modules. So if you've written a helpful general purpose module and you would like us to host it and turn it into like a Cloud Posse module at the caliber of modules, you can do that. We have a Terraform example module repository, and this describes how this is all the scaffolding for a well-built Terraform module for Cloud Posse, for example. Now, I know this doesn't relate directly to your question. I just want to show you how we do something similar to what you're trying to achieve. So we've laid out the scaffolding here, and you see this, use this template. Are you familiar with GitHub's ability of template repositories?
Yes.
Okay, so that's another way you can do is that you can establish a set of template repositories for different kinds of things you do. So you say you build a lot of PHP apps. So you should have your PHP template app for quickly spinning up one of your projects. And then that can have first of all the cookie cutter configuration. That can have any other scaffolding that you need to get that project off the ground.
Okay, yeah, that works for starting them up, and we've got a pretty good solution for kind of a running baseline for when we're generating new projects. But we also have a lot of projects that stay with us for a long time, so we have that existing architecture that we have to do migrations on. Exactly.
It becomes like, how do you do migrations on like the repo at the repo level of your project? So. I mean, in Cloud, we do our own little thing on this. We've been doing this for years. If I were to redo this, I'd probably look into doing something more with cookie cutter. So for Cloud Posse, we have something called the build harness. And under templates here, we have a bunch of files that we roll out to all of our repositories under certain circumstances. And then we have a make file target that helps us steamroll that. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend this pattern right now, given the other tools out there. So yeah, here's GitHub making it. So we have this simple little make file that we use to like roll out all of our issue templates, our code owners file, our pull request template, and any other templates under GitHub templates that we want to add there.
So solving that same problem over again, what do you think you would use?
So I'm torn. So I love Python, and I love Python utilities. What I hate about it is when you want them to run everywhere on anyone's system, and they have to install the kitchen sink to get it running. Of course, you can run it inside of Docker, but what if you have 15 tools you want to tie together? Are you going to tie 15 Docker runs together to do it? So I guess I would probably still stick it in the build harness, but I would probably use a tool like Cookie Cutter distributed inside of the build harness to help us templatize that stuff. There's also a tool called Gauntlet we really like. It's in Go. So it takes the concept of Go templates, but turns it into a CLI tool that you can run anywhere. And it supports lots and lots of data sources. So it supports RESTful API endpoints, it supports directories, it supports JSON files, it supports all these kinds of things. And it allows you to templatize absolutely anything. So it's a little bit lower level, you could say, than a tool like Cookie Cutter being more opinionated in how it does it, where Gauntlet being less opinionated and just gives you a raw templating tool on the command line. Yeah, so there are some options. Any other options you'd like to add, Zach or someone else?
No, I was actually going to recommend Gauntlet as well. I was going to say that. I've been for customizing, if you're looking at like at a Helm-like experience, but without Kubernetes and all that Helm crap, look at Gauntlet. It does more, allows you to do data sources and all sorts of other fun stuff. So
if you've ever interacted with any Cloud Posse modules, you'll see we have this readme.yaml. And this is our own specification that we've come up with. And it was just like, how do we standardize our readmes so they're uniform and that we don't need to copy all that boilerplate everywhere? So here's the gist of the readme in a structured format. And then we render that down to a markdown file that when viewed, it's quite nice and very clean across all our projects. We achieve that using using Gauntlet. So here's our Go template for that README. And you can see we define a source. We read the readme.yaml file, any other includes, and then we go ahead and just render that README markdown file. So some love it, some hate it, but it was the only way we could scale it across 300 repositories that we have. Yeah, what is it now?
yeah, so you created declarative YAML for your readmes and made an engine for it with Gauntlet, which is really cool.
Exactly. Also, one other idea for you there, though. I say this more and more these days that you don't have to be mutually exclusive with your CI systems or your CD systems. And there's so many of these automation tools around your source control that I think you're really walking yourself into the corner if you say, we can only use BuildKite. Use BuildKite for what BuildKite's good for. Use GitHub Actions what GitHub Actions is good for. Use Harness.io for what Harness.io is good for. Use these purpose-built CI and CD tools where they fit in the best, rather than turning the wrong tool into what you need it to. Like Terraform Cloud, awesome for continuous delivery of Terraform, but not what I like as my CI platform. I mean, you could probably hack something together with local exec providers or something, but that would be a joke. All right.
That's all helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, let's see here. What else? Any other questions here? Looks like that was the last question from Stefan. Any other questions we can help answer?
Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Hello. So last week, me and my team has accomplished our CICD goal, like using Jenkins, Terraform, all the things are in place, EKS, all these things are in place. Now what we are doing it for the monitoring purpose. Okay, so now we are looking into Grafana and Prometheus. We essentially what we are looking for, not for logging purpose, just for the dashboard view. So what we are now doing is looking into this Grafana and Prometheus. But one thing is, I just came across like Amazon Container Insight or something. So I'm not sure about what that is.
Yeah, so I think Amazon has recently come out with some better options for monitoring containers, but I'll be honest that we use just Prometheus and Grafana for most things, and sometimes Datadog in terms of integrations for customers, but we haven't built a competency around their container things.
Isn't the Containers Insight just for ECS? And you mentioned Kubernetes. I'm not sure if it's also for...
Okay, it's not for EKS, you're saying.
No, it is. I'm using it.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
How are you digging it, Neil?
You just run a daemon set in your cluster, and it pushes metrics to CloudWatch.
Okay.
So there's documentation. I actually just set it up this week, like on Monday, I think.
Oh, cool.
So just on the early stages of setting it up. And
does it have any dashboard or something, which is good looking?
It uses the CloudWatch dashboards that that you get if you're pushing any metrics into CloudWatch.
But does it come with any nice canned dashboards, the way that you get the canned dashboards out of Grafana? Well, not necessarily Grafana, but community provides for Grafana.
It's not as flexible as Grafana. I think it has like maybe 6 dashboards built in. And then another thing that you can do is push Prometheus metrics using this daemon set. Actually, it's a deployment.
Okay.
You can run a deployment. So there's 2 pieces. You can either run a daemon set, and that pulls metrics like about your pods that are running and your CPU utilization and all this basic stuff. Then you could run a deployment that you can configure to scrape Prometheus metrics from your cluster too, and push those into CloudWatch.
Okay, so they officially support that now.
Yeah, that's also, and I think it's still in beta.
We have a pretty popular project here that we did a number of years ago called Prometheus to CloudWatch, which does that as well. But if Amazon's supporting it, I'd go for that.
Okay. I'll have a look into it. Oh, any other open source which I'm not seen anything like Prometheus and Grafana. It's easy to set up Prometheus and Grafana in EKS, but any other open source tools which we can consider?
So I just want to clarify with a lot of these things and a lot of stuff on Kubernetes. A lot of things, because of Helm charts and the like, are really easy to get up and running and deploy on EKS and Kubernetes. But operationalizing it and doing it the right way takes quite a lot of effort and often several weeks to get that over the line. Like deploying Prometheus, yeah, you're up and done in like 5 minutes deploying that chart. There, I did it, and immediate gratification. But then you want to do it like for scale, and well, you got to deploy it with a persistent storage backend like Thanos, and then you're going to deploy Thanos, and Thanos needs S3 buckets and service accounts and all of that stuff. And then you got to tune your the limits on the Prometheus scrapers, and you got to do all this other work to get it over the line and tune your alerts. And so it's definitely a lot of work, actually.
Okay. Thanks for the heads up.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think the default will maybe provision some EBS volumes, but if you're using EBS volumes, now your Prometheus is zone locked. So you're not really gonna be able, you're not really in a high HA configuration. So how do you get to HA? You can use EFS.
The most simple HA for Prometheus is to deploy it to 2 AZs, like completely separated Prometheus that do not have any contact with themselves, and both of them can be used as a HA setup. And Alert Manager, or because it's common pattern to use Alert Manager, and Alert Manager can distinguish them and can deduplicate the alerts that are coming. Okay,
that's cool. This is one of the things though that Thanos does, is the deduplication, so you get a synthesized source of truth from both of them. But yeah. Oh, I wonder, can that proxy be deployed without using the rest of Thanos? Do you know? I wonder. The deduplication proxy. All right, well, that was a good question. So yeah, other open source monitoring tools for Kubernetes. I don't know. I would say choosing any other tool at this point would be like Contrarian.
Suicide.
Yeah. The whole community has put their full weight behind Prometheus Grafana as a solution for this. Then there are the vendor-specific solutions by Datadog and Sysdig and whatnot.
Okay, got it. Anyway, I'll have a look into that container insight. I will post my experience here.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Cool.
Cool. Next question. Let's see if anything else posted into the Slack channel here. No new questions yet.
I wanted to ask
Zach,
about,
you always have something interesting. Oh, wait, Neil, go ahead.
Yeah, about Prometheus. Does anybody have experience running multiple clusters and monitoring that with one Prometheus? Is that the best way to do it, or or do you run a Prometheus per cluster?
We've recently gone down this as a design decision with one of our customers and how to architect it, and I can share what we arrived at for that. But before I taint the conversation, if anybody else wants to chime in on that, I'd like to hear.
I can quickly chime in. The most important in monitoring is to have the monitoring system close to the monitoring things. So if you have a cluster in a VPC or in a subnet, then monitoring should be as close to it, as close to the resources as possible. And this is one constraint that I think is pretty good to obey.
So okay, so yeah, let's pick up from where Marcin left off. And I agree. So I agree with all that. There are consequences of that decision that then have other implications. So if you're just doing like vanilla Prometheus and you're doing that for lots of environments and clusters, it can get really expensive if you want to have high retention because storing lots of time series data for busy clusters or clusters with a lot of pods gets expensive. So then how do you have long retention with lots of clusters and do that? Well, federation then comes up as one of those answers, right? Have short retention in each one of your clusters and centralize that to a big Prometheus instance somewhere and report on that. Well, problem with this is if you want to use any of the dashboards out there from the community, they're not designed for federated Prometheus. And if you want to visualize your data per cluster, per environment, you're going to now suddenly fall down this rabbit hole of forking every single dashboard for Prometheus out there and doing that. So what we've arrived at in the end is using Thanos and having so still deploying Prometheus per cluster, have each cluster have long-term retention in Prometheus, in Thanos. And then Thanos, reduces the operational cost of running that for long-term retention because all the data is in S3. You don't have to have massive Prometheus nodes for running those reports. The aggregation is done or the compaction is done on a cron schedule by Thanos, and it resamples the data, and it allows you to run a Prometheus at scale. And then you can still stick with all the community provided dashboards. They still have a single source backend. It's easy to visualize the metrics for that. Now, this worked for our use case and what we were trying to optimize for. If you have this situation where you have a centralized NOC and you really need to see this stuff centralized somehow, maybe it's not going to work well for you. But then you also need to bite the bullet and invest in owning all those dashboards.
So are you also running Grafana?
Yeah.
On each of these clusters?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So and Grafana on each one. So let me clarify what I said there. The real problem comes down to Grafana and those dashboards, and Grafana dashboards being designed to support federated clusters. And most of them aren't designed for that.
I was just thinking that might be a pain trying to manage all of the different instances of Grafana because you'd have to go to, different URLs to get to different dashboards.
Yeah, so it comes down to where you're coming from as an organization and your workflows. We've been operating this way for years now, so it's just second nature to me. Hey, I'm working with this cluster. I'm going to be on this dashboard in that environment for everything that I do. And it's all self-contained over there. But if you're used to having it centralized in one place, I can see that it'd be kind of like turning things upside down. The nice thing though is that they're decoupled. So the life cycle of making changes to this cluster is totally decoupled from the life cycle of making changes over here. Pros and cons. I don't know, Marcin, do you have any reaction to that, dislike or like?
I would always go for isolation.
Okay.
And because any change to Grafana, which contains all the information for all the clusters, if it will go down because of some issue, then you don't have access to production dashboard, and this might be critical.
Yeah.
So the isolation is really nice.
Yeah.
Also, anyone that will, for example, break into your Grafana will have a lot more information about all your infrastructure than just about just part of your infrastructure. So there's a lot of things that comes into play with isolation and a lot of benefits of that.
Yeah, it's been good for us so far, and this has been the architecture we deploy. And what I like about it is it's very consistent, meaning we're not creating a snowflake configuration that makes perfect sense in this customer for this situation. We solved it generically so that if you want to have 10 environments, it's no different than if you want to have 3 environments, and it works across all customers in a similar set way. So it's repeatable.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and taking a step back, when, for example, we receive an alert, what I would like to see is a URL or set of URLs where I can investigate more, link to Kibana with some logs. And when I click it, I will go to a specified dashboard for the alert so I can get the information, because it's usually I use the Grafana as a actionable in actionable way. So something has happened, I need to take a look at it. It happened on production, I will go to production. It happened in this client's account, I will go to the client's account, Grafana. So it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah. Zach, curious if you have opinions on that.
Right now, I don't. I'm
Okay.
a little bit removed from this particular conversation from the work I'm doing at the moment. So,
Fair enough.
although normally I am heavily opinionated.
Yeah. You're
Okay,
more on you're deep in the trenches on CI and release engineering right now, right?
Mostly actually HashiCorp Vault and getting
Vault.
it integrated into large environments. So.
Okay. Cool.
Do you know if it will be soon integrated with Terraform Cloud, maybe?
I hope so, because GitLab's about to have it integrated before them.
Oh.
Really? GitLab's going to start offering Vault?
No, well, yeah, they actually did. I think they started with doing a Vault deployment through their Kubernetes clusters, like a, make it readily available. But they realized a lot of people do their Vault deployments on-prem, and so it's really just the integration within their interface that they're lacking. You know, otherwise you use JWT auth based integration, and they've got directions for that, but everything else is still scripting out and using like Vault env and other things like that, and they're working towards that other end of just sort of adding in those extra features of pulling that stuff natively. So kind of exciting. So
yeah, I do see this as a trend. I know CodeFresh has started supporting external secrets for storage. It's always been this like dirty integration challenge doing CI, right? Where are your secrets? You need them to be able to run all this automation. You can store them in the source control encrypted, but it works, but it's, I don't know. I still like having a designated system for managing it like Vault or SSM or ASM or something like that. So seeing these CI systems integrate with secret stores that you manage and control versus saying, hey, I trust you to manage my secrets. I do like this trend.
Mm.
Yeah. Cool. Next question. Oh, let's see
There's
here.
a question on the...
Yeah, Krishna says, I'm new to Terraform. I've written a Terraform module to create AWS code pipelines that me and my team can use to create multiple pipelines. So a pipeline that creates pipelines, it sounds like.
I love that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. All pipeline module definitions are under a single main.tf file. And I am so jealous of the guy that bought main.tf, by the way. I haven't done anything with it. I'm just pissed that it wasn't me. anyways, a file through, though I'm passing multiple TFR files. When I run Terraform plan, I see that the Terraform plan is running to modify the existing resource rather than creating a new one. Marcin, you see the problem, or?
Yeah, the problem is that the state is in S3 bucket, and so we create resources that are named, for example, code pipeline, and code pipeline is fed with the TFRs. So the Terraform plan runs, it works, we apply it, and then we pass it to different TFRs, and all of a sudden we are in the same S3 bucket probably with the same TF state, with the same resource name that has different properties. So Terraform wants to change it, and I think this is the problem.
Yeah, it is probably just something wrong with the state management. Also curious about how you're managing your plans. Technically, you should be storing the plan file as an artifact somewhere and then applying the plan at some point, either through chat ops or on merge to master. This is the one thing, is that doing Terraform the right way in CI is such a pain in the tush. Because, so like, I think this is an understated part of Terraform open source and why it's hard, is that, so one thing Terraform does really well for us in all modern versions of Terraform, once they supported S3 backends, like I forget, Terraform 0.6 or something, so Terraform manages your state file very well, and it does state locking. But Terraform open source does not manage your plan file. And your plan file is almost identical to your state file, except for that's left up as an exercise for you to manage. So how do you manage your plan file and the approval workflow around your plan file, and then applying that plan file? And that sounds easy-ish, but then it gets complicated with what happens if you're working in a team environment and other PRs invalidate that plan? What's the calculus of knowing when one plan invalidates another plan? Simple heuristic is if any other PRs merged before this one, it invalidates all other plans. What if you're working in a mono repo versus poly repo? And I don't know, this is why I've kind of like just concede, just use Terraform Cloud.
Yeah, so far I think only exclusive locking is the way to go with Terraform plan.
And then how do you implement locking? Almost no CI system does locking, so now you need to have a lock service. So now you need to create some, Rube Goldberg apparatus doing optimistic locking by writing files to S3 or using a DynamoDB table, or I don't know. It's like it quickly becomes this you fall down the rabbit hole by when you get into the nitty-gritty integration details.
This is why like outsourcing this to Terraform Cloud is nice. They just take care of it.
Black box works, does this one thing.
Yeah, really. I don't care.
Yeah. I cared about it for as long as I thought, oh, this is easy, I can do this. Why do I need Terraform Cloud, Atlantis, yada, yada, yada. Then I've tried to do this now over the last year, 2-3 times, or like 5 or 6 times. And I'm like, please, let's just stop. There are alternatives also to Terraform Cloud. I should mention, like, there's companies Spacelift.io and Scalar, SCALR.com are 2 alternatives to Terraform Cloud. I haven't used them though.
Maybe someone else used it.
Yeah.
Would be nice.
Actually, there's another guy, the founder of Spacelift.io is also Polish and is also named Marcin.
Maybe it's me.
You've infiltrated Cloud Posse. You are.
Yeah. I will change everything to use that Scalar.
Yeah.
Soon enough.
No, this is Spacelift.
Spacelift, right.
Yeah. Spacelift.io. Let's see here. So I don't know if we answered your question, Krishna. Feel free to unmute and chime in if you want to ask anything else. Otherwise, we can answer someone else. Any other questions? We've got about 10 minutes left on the call today.
Hello? It's,
hey,
it's okay. Yeah. So it's nothing technical, but one of my customer has put a requirement to set up their infrastructure into full CI/CD pipeline, and they want to use Terraform. But their requirement is the engineer who is working should have Terraform certified. So my company is pushing me to get Terraform certified in 1 month or so. They are giving me a deadline. So I'm good with Terraform, and I can do things with Terraform, but I'm attending a Terraform certification exam. I'm not that much confident because I don't know what is happening there. So I just want to know if anyone attended that exam and if anyone have any experience or something.
I forget who it is. I know somebody announced it relatively recently that they passed their cert for that, but I don't know who that was.
That's me, probably.
That was you, Zach?
Yeah, the Terraform cert, is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
I got the associate cert. It wasn't too bad. It was like the shortest time between studying for the exam and actually taking it.
Okay.
It was this particular one for me. So.
And you actually haven't been doing that much stuff with Terraform too, right?
At the time I wasn't, but now I'm jumping back into doing everything Terraform again.
So that might be a motivational role.
Oh, okay.
That if you're an academic type, it sounds like you can probably study for it pretty quickly.
Yeah, I use the Udemy, UDEMY, like practice exams. I didn't even use the course. I just went through the practice exams a few times and sort of made sure I understood what it was, where it was wrong. So they're never 100% right,
Yeah.
So, and yeah, seem to be fine by me. So.
Okay, good. Okay.
And I also put a lab out there for actually creating it within a Linux host using Terraform and creating oh no, that was my Kubernetes exam. Never mind. Sorry. Never mind.
Let's see here. Andy asks, if you're on AWS and a company trying to improve your infrastructure setup, are there recommendations out of these options? Kubernetes via EKS, Kubernetes via COPS, Docker via ECS, or Nomad? I'll answer, I'll take a first pass at some of these. I think who you ask this question to is going to largely determine the answers you get. This is a very hot topic. But if it's between Kubernetes on EKS or Kubernetes on COPS, and we're talking for Amazon, look, I was a big proponent for COPS for many years. That's what we were deploying exclusively until the beginning of this year. EKS has reached maturity now, especially with the support of managed node pools. I would say it's a black and white answer. Just go for EKS. Now, Andrew Roth, I don't know if you're on the call today. There are certain edge cases which preclude you from using EKS for certain certification reasons. Okay, fine. If that's what's going to happen, then consider using COPS. Also, if you're going to go that route, maybe consider using one of the other automation tools for Kubernetes on AWS. But I would go EKS. Now, if it's ECS, I'm still not a fan or convert of this. We have a lot of Terraform modules for ECS at Cloud Posse. I just like the end-to-end automation that you get with Kubernetes for describing the resources to deploy your application. It just feels like ECS is like you're always deploying foundational stuff, where I just want to be deploying all my stuff that sits on top of that foundation. Kubernetes, you deploy that foundation once, you could just work with Kubernetes the rest of it. With ECS, you're just always down in the nitty-gritty for everything. And Nomad, I only hear good things. I've never heard anybody poo-poo on Nomad. Nomad sounds like they've taken a lot of the criticisms of EKS and a lot of or Kubernetes, let's say, and a lot of the criticisms of ECS and created a generalized, simplified, dumbed down container management solution that solves 80% of what you want to do and makes the last 20% really hard, perhaps. So that's not a scientific explanation of the differences, but my professional understanding of the differences.
In the question, so what currently Andy has, and he wants to migrate to the options, but what is currently in AWS?
Yeah.
ASG with the EC2s or Lambda or something else?
Hi. So our current setup is, our current setup is basically, yeah, ASGs with EC2. So we're a mixture of PHP, Nginx, monolithic stack, and we've got about half of our apps written in Docker, but it's like a manually cobbled together Docker setup. So where there's a lot of manual. And
so what you're running Docker on EC2s in an autoscale group, kind of that way.
So our monoliths are all in auto scaling groups, but our Docker stuff is, we've basically got three servers which have been spun up manually, and they have Docker running on them. And then we use Capistrano to basically deploy our Docker apps onto those. Yeah. Yeah, but we're looking to try and come into the brave new world and improve things, and just basically out of those options, trying to make a decision on what would make sense.
How big is your team?
So we've got basically myself and another colleague who is very experienced with Kubernetes, and I suppose, yeah, we've basically been tasked with trying to research which is the best option for the company. And I think we're kind of leaning towards EKS, but we're trying to just make sure we've done our due diligence and come up with a balanced argument for why we want to use it. And
yeah, one option I can add, last week we talked about ECS with the Fargate. So this is ECS, but without EC2 nodes. You just spin containers and don't care about them on AWS, and it's AWS reliability to support them and make them available. So if you're looking for less operations, then pick managed services like EKS or ECS. If you're looking for a lot of work, then you can implement Nomad and COPS. But it depends. If
they're coming out with managed Nomad now as part of I believe. So that's
okay.
Yeah, but yeah, so here's the thing. It's like, so even though EKS is now fully managed, you get your master nodes and worker nodes.
It's a beast.
It's not fully managed. Nothing about Kubernetes is fully managed. Like you have so many things on top of it that you still need to manage the life cycle of it if you want to get that utility. You got all your operators, you got your Istios, you got your cert managers, you got your ingresses, you got your external DNS controllers, you got your Prometheus perhaps, if you're going to go that route, all these other things, and it opens a Pandora's box because you can. I think the success of Kubernetes is largely because of that, but it becomes a lot of stuff to manage, and the bit rot is real. I say this as somebody who recommends EKS all day long, but not to small teams. There's something about ECS, I guess, is that because you don't get all that, because you can't make all of that stuff easy, because you can't do all of that, it pigeonholes you into a simpler architecture using fully managed stuff that Amazon provides. Like with ECS, you could deploy Prometheus. You're probably not going to deploy Prometheus. You're probably just going to go CloudWatch, and then you have fully managed CloudWatch. With Kubernetes, you're probably going to want to have FluentD and all these other things and Elasticsearch somewhere. But with ECS, you're probably not going to do that. You're probably just going to use CloudWatch logs. I don't like CloudWatch. I don't like CloudWatch logs. I don't like a lot of these things. but because those are just easier to do with ECS, you end up doing it. And the win for a smaller team is you have less surface area you got to manage.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's why I mentioned ECS Fargate. Maybe this is something that you want to look into.
And then ECS Fargate being even lower, even less management overhead. And it does now support spot instances, which is nice.
Okay, so do you think if you're a team going with EKS, then is part of the issue you mentioned around the maintenance side of things, is that because you're kind of forced to an extent to keep upgrading as they deprecate versions
and things, Kubernetes, first of all, Kubernetes as a technology only supports the last 3 minor releases. And so 15, so if it's, if it's 18 today, then they support 17 and 16, but then 15 and 14 and 13 and everything else is end of life. So that the good thing is that forces you to stay current. The bad thing is, our experience is that as much as they try and eliminate this as being a problem, there are breaking changes between certain minor releases. Like they just deprecated V1 Beta 1, and that meant everywhere you use that as a version specifier, you had to upgrade those deployments to now just use V1. And there are situations where your upgrade might seem to go, but you actually need to upgrade containers of your kubelet proxies or whatever. I forget which one it was, but so you find these things out by A, reading the release notes, B, doing it in your sandbox or dev environments. But the management of these things, it's real. Don't underestimate it. Yeah. It is a tremendous competitive advantage for companies that need the sophistication. What I like in Kubernetes too is it's more like the Rails of cloud. It's like it's a framework to do absolutely any kind of automation where you need all these primitives to be able to orchestrate it. But that is not a competitive advantage for all companies, and that's actually a liability for smaller companies that can't utilize that stuff.
Exactly. The Kubernetes is complicated beast, right? So the operation is complicated, the security is really complicated, the performance, you need to adjust every pod, and this is really involving task to set up Kubernetes to your own liking. That's why for small companies and not experienced people in Kubernetes, setting up a cluster that will just work. But anything more than that will require a lot of knowledge and time.
Okay, I mean, just out of interest, I mean, what kind of team size would you think it makes sense to, where you kind of have enough people to maintain it and then you're still getting the benefits of?
So there's no steadfast rule, and sometimes it will be like, well, if the company has it only has 3 team members, but they all are former Google SREs, okay, yeah, let's make an exception for you. But if the company has 3 team members and they're all front-end devs and hate using the command line shell, yeah, let's recommend other things. My rule of thumb is for Cloud Posse, I like to work with teams that have at least 10 engineers, where they need the runway that it affords by having all the bells and whistles of Kubernetes, and that they have enough team members that this responsibility can shift between and you have continuity. But when you're just one or 2 members or 2 or 3 members, like, churn is real. People are coming and going, better opportunities, family things, COVID, who knows? And then you have all this complexity, all this tacit knowledge that's stored in somebody's head. That how do you convey that? So
yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
If you want to see complexity, just read any changelog from version to version of Kubernetes, and you will see a wall of text, which you need to read if you want to upgrade it.
Yeah. There was just somebody who posted an interesting article on Hacker News this past week. I didn't read the full thing, but the gist of it was like, it was related to etcd and how etcd was this beautiful, consistent raft consensus-based key value store. And then it is what it is today, which is this complex monstrosity. And I relate to that as having deployed Kubernetes from going back to, I forget what my first version was of Kubernetes, but it was early, like 1.1, 1.2, and we were doing this on CoreOS, and there was no documentation on how to set this up. It was complicated, but etcd was a beautiful little thing that was easy to get going, and I loved it. And this is what has happened to Kubernetes and every tool that achieves success, is that it suddenly, this company wants this requirement, this use case, this use case, this use case, and it's all shoved into one thing. And then it's just like, oh my God, how do we manage this?
There's one project, there's a person, Brian Brazil, I think, in Prometheus, and he rejects any improvements because this will just increase complexity of Prometheus, and this is not designed for Prometheus. And this is quite annoying in some way, but in some way I respect that.
Yeah.
It's
interesting.
really
like
nice.
We deal with this at Cloud Posse, right? We're constantly getting PRs for contributions for things that, well, technically not something we need to support, but we want to appeal to the most amount of people. And right now we're still accepting most of that stuff. At some point though, like, yeah, we're going to have to be a little bit more hard-nosed on what we do accept. But right now we're still haven't developed that. The other thing is, like, you want to accept these contributions, and I can see why they're useful, but did they update the tests for it? No. Can I ask them to update the tests? It's kind of like a big, like, screw you, especially if, like, the tests are written in Go, but their contribution is in Terraform. Like, okay, so now you got to know how to write Go tests. It hurts me because I've been a contributor as well. Like, I just want to fix this thing. It's an obvious problem, but I don't know how to write these tests, or I don't have the time. Like, customers not paying me to write tests. They just paid me to fix your bug. So, do what you want with this contribution. And the sad thing is then they don't get accepted. So we have like PRs out for Nginx, Helm charts and things like that fix blatant problems, but because we didn't write tests for it, they don't accept it. Yeah. That's it. Well, we're out of time for today. I appreciate everyone's time and sharing. Please do join our, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't yet already, so you get the latest updates. I'll post a link to the Office Hours Slack with a link to that if that sounds interesting. Other than that, I do thank everyone for posting your questions. I hope we answered them. I always learn a lot from these. Thank you again. Stick around in the Office Hours channel for recording, and tune in next week, same place, same time, to talk shop about DevOps and learn new and amazing things. Take care.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Adios.